The cold hit her palm before she understood what it meant. Dr. Elena Marsh pressed her hand against the smaller twin's back and held it there, counting seconds, holding her breath. In a climate-controlled enclosure where the overnight temperature had been a steady 22 degrees Celsius. Damu should have been warm. He wasn't. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a door she had been keeping shut for 9 days swung open. Nadia was on the far side of the enclosure. She had been on the far side every morning for 9 days. Both twins alive. Both twins fed. But Nadia, always distant, always turned away, and now this. Damu too cold. Nobody could explain why, and in 4 days, protocol would make the decision for them. Before we go further, if stories like this move you, this is the perfect moment to subscribe and leave a like. And write in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Stories like this one come out every week and you don't want to miss them. Nadia had delivered the twins 17 days ago. It had been a difficult birth, prolonged, complicated, the kind that left the veterinary team watching monitors for hours. When it was over, there were two. Kodo, the larger twin, born first and strong from the first breath, and Damu, smaller by 400 grams, who had needed intervention in his first minutes and whose temperature had taken 3 hours to stabilize. By all measures, both were now healthy. By all measures, their mother had rejected them both. It had started on day 2. Nadia had moved to the far side of the enclosure and stayed there, present but unreachable, watching her twins with an expression Elena could not read. She wasn't aggressive, didn't push them away, didn't vocalize at them. She simply withdrew, maintained a distance, watched. Elena had spent 9 days trying to find a category for it. Maternal rejection had a look she recognized, the avoidance, the tension, the quality of an animal that has made a decision and is holding to it. This was not that. Nadia watched her twins with an attention too focused, too precise, too present for an animal that had simply given up. There was something in her eyes Elena could not name. Elena logged it as unclassifiable and moved on. She was beginning to think that had been the first mistake of many. There was one evening she kept coming back to, 3 days before the illness. The center had been almost empty, most of the staff gone, the enclosures quiet in the particular way of buildings settling into night. Elena had been finishing paperwork when something made her stop at the observation window. Nadia was standing over Damu. He was asleep. She wasn't touching him, wasn't vocalizing, just looking. And on Nadia's face was something Elena had no scientific word for, not vigilance, not assessment. Something rawer than that, the specific expression of a mother who knows her child is fragile and has made a private decision about what that means. Elena felt she was witnessing something she had no right to see. Oh, she stood at that window for a long time. Then she went back to her desk and wrote in her notes, anomalous vigilance behavior, no protocol category. 3 days later, Nadia was sick and Damu was alone. Damu was small but alert, curious, responsive, eating well from the bottle. It was only the mornings that troubled Elena. That particular coolness that didn't match the ambient temperature. She had logged it as anomalous on day 4, day 7, day 9, each time without an explanation that satisfied her. One detail she had logged without understanding. Every morning, Damu was in a slightly different position than where he had fallen asleep. Not dramatically different, just shifted, turned slightly onto his right side, his back angled toward the warmer eastern wall of the nest. She had logged it as infant, as movement during sleep. She was beginning to wonder if that had been a mistake, too. Thomas Reed had been a senior keeper at Mbali for 22 years. He was not a man who moved fast when slow was better. He came to find Elena on the afternoon of day 10. "We need to talk about separation," he said. "She hasn't actively rejected them." "Elena, that's a distinction that matters." Thomas was quiet. Outside, through the observation window, Nadia sat with her back partially turned, her two sons playing 30 feet away. Elena knew what separation meant. She had done it before, had held a rejected infant while its mother watched from the other side of the glass. She knew that separated twins sometimes never fully bonded again, that the decision to intervene, once made, could not be unmade. And she knew, though she had not said this to Thomas, that something about this case was sitting in her chest in a way she could not resolve. Not a feeling she could log, just a weight that would not lift. "Give me 4 more days," she said. "Let me install additional night cameras. Something is happening that we're not seeing." Thomas looked at her for a long time. "4 days," he said, "and then we follow protocol." She had 4 days to find something that 9 days of professional observation had missed. She had no idea where to look. Elena installed the cameras that afternoon. 4 additional units, wide-angle, infrared, positioned to cover every corner of the enclosure without a blind spot. She set the recording to begin at 10 p.m. and end at 6 a.m. Then she went home and did not sleep well. The first night's footage showed nothing unusual. Elena watched it alone, in the empty monitoring room, the center quiet around her. Nadia in her usual sleeping position, the twins together in the nest area. Normal breathing, normal movement, normal everything. She sat there for a long time after the footage ended, in the silence of a building where everyone else had gone home, and tried to identify what she was feeling. It wasn't relief. 3 days left before protocol. The second night she almost didn't watch. She had been sitting at her desk at 11 p.m. with the footage open on her screen and her hand on the trackpad, and she had thought, nothing is there. You've already decided what this is. You're looking for something that doesn't exist because the alternative, that you've been wrong for 9 days, is harder to accept than giving up. She had almost closed the laptop. Instead, she pressed play. She was watching at 1.5 times speed, an hour into the footage, when the timestamp read 2:47 a.m. and Nadia moved. Elena dropped the speed to normal. She leaned forward. She watched Nadia cross the enclosure slowly, not the quick movement of an animal responding to a disturbance, but something more deliberate. Careful. The movement of an animal that knows exactly what it is doing. Nadia reached the nest. She looked at both twins for a long moment. Then she leaned down and pressed her nose against Damu's back. Slowly, carefully, the way a mother checks breathing. She stayed like that for several seconds. Then she lifted her head, and with both hands, with a precision that made Elena's breath stop, she moved Damu. Not far, 3 inches, maybe 4. Turned him slightly onto his right side. Angled his back toward the eastern wall, the exact position Elena found him in every morning. Elena sat at her desk and could not move. She sat there for a long time. The footage was still running, Nadia behind Damu, 3 hours and 40 minutes of warmth in the dark, but Elena had stopped watching. She was looking at her own hands on the desk, at the notepad beside the keyboard where she had written on day 2, maternal rejection, monitor and reassess. At the coffee cup she had brought in that morning and forgotten to drink. 9 days. 9 days she had walked into that enclosure and looked at Nadia, and seen an animal that had given up, had written it down, had built a case for separation, had stood in front of Thomas and defended a conclusion she had reached on day 2 and never questioned again. And every night, every single night while she drove home and ate dinner and slept, Nadia had been crossing that enclosure in the dark. Elena pressed both hands flat on the desk. She didn't trust herself to stand up yet. Then Nadia lay down behind him, a wall of warmth between the smaller twin and the cool air of the enclosure. She stayed for 3 hours and 40 minutes. At 6:19 a.m., 11 minutes before Elena's shift began, she stood up, looked at Damu once more, then crossed back to the far side of the enclosure and resumed her position, as if she had never moved. Elena pulled up night 2 and night 3 and night 4, the same. Every night the same. Always Damu. Always between 2 and 3 a.m. Always the nose check first. Always the repositioning. 3 inches, 4, the same angle, the same wall. Always 3 to 4 hours. Always gone before the morning shift arrived. She counted the nights, 9 nights, 9 nights of a mother who, by every daytime measure, by every protocol, by every behavioral assessment Elena had been trained to make, had rejected her twins. 9 nights of a mother who had never stopped. She called Thomas at 7 a.m. "Come to the monitoring room," she said. "I need to show you something." He watched the footage without speaking. Elena watched him watch it. She had seen Thomas Reed manage crises for 22 years, had seen him absorb bad news with the particular stillness of someone who has learned that stillness is more useful than reaction. She had never seen his face do what it did now. He leaned forward when Nadia stood. He leaned further when she crossed the enclosure. When she leaned down and pressed her nose against Damu's back, when her hands moved him those 3 inches with that impossible precision, Thomas put one hand flat on the desk. He watched her stay. 3 hours and 40 minutes, compressed to 40 seconds at 6 times speed. He watched her stand, cross back, resume her position. As if she had never moved, Thomas sat back slowly. Elena watched him process it, watched him do the same calculation she had done alone in the monitoring room. 9 nights. Every night while the center was dark and the keepers were home, and the instruments showed nothing unusual. Nadia had been crossing that enclosure. Checking Damu's breathing. Moving him 3 inches. Lying down behind him until the temperature stabilized. Every night, alone, without anyone seeing. He didn't say anything for a long time. "Why Damu?" he said finally. "Why not both?" "I don't know yet," Elena said, "but I think I know how to find out." She ran the full panel that afternoon. Temperature regulation assessment, metabolic screening, thyroid function, everything. The results came back the following morning. Damu had a mild but significant dysfunction in his thermoregulation system, a condition affecting his ability to maintain core body temperature during the reduced metabolic activity of deep sleep. During the day, active and moving, he was fine. During the night, his temperature dropped. Not enough to trigger monitoring alarms, but enough. Enough that, without an external heat source during the coldest hours, his development would have been compromised in ways that might not have shown up for months. The condition was treatable, easily, once you knew it was there. Elena sat with the results for a long time before she called anyone. 9 days. She had spent 9 days observing Nadia with the tools she had been trained to use: behavioral checklists, interaction frequency logs, proximity, measurements, vocalization analysis. She had watched with professional attention and recorded what she saw with professional precision, and she had missed it completely. Not because the signs weren't there, because the signs were happening at 2:47 a.m. in the dark, in the hours between one shift and the next, in the space between what her instruments measured and what was actually occurring. Nadia had known on day 1, had understood something about her son that Elena, with all her training, all her equipment, had needed 9 days and 4 additional cameras to find. She thought about that for a long time before she picked up the phone. Thomas appeared in her doorway. "She knew," he said. It wasn't a question. "She knew," Elena said. She had known, Elena thought, since the beginning. Since day 1, since the first night, maybe, when Damu's temperature had dropped for the first time, and Nadia had understood something in the dark that Elena's instruments had not registered, could not register, had no category for. 9 days of watching a mother she had called rejecting. 9 days of preparing separation protocols. 9 days of being wrong in a way that her training had given her no tools to correct. "What do we do now?" Thomas said. "We treat Damu," Elena said, "and we stop calling it rejection." She installed a thermal monitoring patch on Damu that afternoon and adjusted the overnight heating protocol for his area of the nest. That night, for the first time in 9 nights, Nadia did not cross to Damu. She did not need to. Elena watched the footage that final night alone, Nadia still, the twins warm. Damu's temperature steady through every hour. The particular feeling of having been corrected by something you thought you were responsible for understanding. 3 weeks later, Elena stood at the observation window and watched Nadia groom both twins simultaneously. Kato on her left, Damu on her right, her large hands moving with the focused tenderness of an animal, entirely at ease with what it is doing. Damu was thriving. And Nadia, who had known everything from the beginning, who had worked alone in the dark for 9 nights without recognition, without anyone seeing, was finally just a mother with her sons. Nothing more, nothing less. Exactly what she had always been. Do you believe Nadia was always a good mother, even when everyone thought she wasn't? Yes or no? Write your answer in the comments, subscribe, and leave a like. Thanks for listening. See you in the next video. Have a magnificent day.